Ah, the great outdoors. Yes. Yes. Uh, okay. Anyways, grab a blanket, turn off your lights for three true scary ghost stories that happened in the wilderness. Mystery monks. I have long had an interest in a relatively rare paranormal occurrence. This is sightings of a group of monks in remote and difficult to access locations. One story I heard, allegedly firsthand, was a college student who had gone to the outer banks of NC in the winter. There were long distances between towns and very few people, especially in the wintertime. This guy was out on the beach at night, looking at the stars when he saw a band of people walking up to the beach in a group. What struck him was that they were all wearing robes like monks, and as they got closer, he seemed to hear them chanting. They all had their hoods up, so their faces couldn't be seen. The sight of them marching and chanting freaked him out, and he ran into the dunes and hid. When he went back to the beach, they were nowhere to be seen. No houses, no towns, no vehicles in sight. I have also read other stories of similar groups spotted in very remote wilderness areas by people working. They describe the same thing. A small group wearing monks' robes marching throughout the forest. Sometimes they chant, sometimes they're holding candles. Always hood up. No faces visible. Everyone who saw these groups felt creeped out and stayed out of their sight or hid, just wondering if anyone has any stories or thoughts to add on the matter. Experiences with forests. Have you seen something like this? Me and my friend drive around a lot during nights. She likes driving and I like sitting in the car. So long story short, during our trips, we found many weird roads in the woods. Most of them are old roads to farms. But it's not the roads that are weird, it's the trees, the woods. On more than 6 to 9 occasions, we've seen an otherwise dark forest lit up, sort of like exposing a path into the forest, and an irresistible urge to get out of the car and step on this road. Since we both tend to sense certain things in our everyday lives, we've not been too keen to explore these roads, and I hope we never will. We've checked these spots, we mark them in an app sometimes when we don't exactly know where we are, in daylight, but there's never a specific road, just trees. Of course, we've considered things like car headlights, bending light, moonlight, nearby houses, etc., but it's that horrifying feeling or emotions we experience when we see those roads that keep us haunting. Recently, we were driving near towns, suburbs where houses were built near a wilderness preserve. There's a cemetery on the other side and a river across it. I've never liked this place anyways, never been near it by foot either. But that night, some sections near the road just felt fucked up. We honestly thought someone was coming through the trees, some jogger or hiker, but no one was there. But there was a light. And at the same time, someone was very interested in us going there. I swear we could hear the whispers. Our navigation app stopped working, and when we tried to get out of there, all the small streets led back to that forest. And around that time, someone was laughing very hard at us, until I got pissed, opened the window, and yelled back at him. Next moment, our app starts working, and we found out we were less than a minute away from the main road. Have any of you got any experiences like that? What is or your explanation? Do you know places like this as well? My experience with what I now believe was a skinwalker. First post here on Reddit Paranormal. Now, This is definitely not the creepiest story ever, but still, it is still something that I think back on every now and again. I often wonder to myself, had I not listened to what my parents had told me, what would have happened? This happened to me a few years back when I was 5 years old. I was a pretty active kid. I'd go outside and play anytime I got the chance to do so. That being said, because it was the summertime, I had every intention to run around outside, pretending with toy guns. Here's a couple things you should know about the property I live on. Number 1, there's a fairly large pond to the north of our home, only about 200 feet, that you can easily get to on foot through a small forest between our house and the pond. There are several methods to getting to and from it, as we've cleared several paths over the years. Number 2, we live in a pretty rural area. We're close to other homes. Now don't get me wrong, but as far as we know, past our house everything to the north is a few miles of unexplored wilderness. Number 3, we live 100 feet away from my grandmother's home. My parents had gone out that day. My dad was at work and my mom was getting groceries. I couldn't tell you where my grandfather was if I tried, but at that time, we were staying with my grandmother for a couple hours until one of our parents got home. My brother had laid down for a nap, as he was 2 years old at the time, and I decided to go out and play. My grandmother had told me to stay close to the house, so I did. As unrealistic as it sounds, I knew even at that age that there were bad people in the world. And being the fact that we lived just down the road from an apartment complex, and we would frequently see junkies and other riffraff walking down the road in front of my grandmother's house, I knew this all too well. Something else that's notable, my grandfather would frequently take me over to that pond to fish. He would always catch monstrous catfish, while I stuck to my sunfish and bluegills. But we had a rule that was absolutely stressed to my little brother and I from a young age. Do not go over to the pond unless there is an adult with you. Even at 5, I knew the dangers of being alone in the wilderness without an adult with me. Because even then and today, we knew for a fact that people would frequently trek from that apartment complex, across where that pond is, go through a small field to the east, and would follow the road into town from there. So, I was outside playing with a toy gun or something, doing the general thing a 5-year-old would do, mouth sound effects and all, when all of a sudden something stopped me. I had heard a voice. As far as I knew, I was the only one outdoors at the time. Then I heard the voice for a second time, and couldn't quite make out what it was saying. I checked the back and front door of my grandmother's home, just to make sure it wasn't her. It wasn't! Then I heard the same voice a third time, and I knew where it was. It was coming from my house, but there was no one there, and I knew this. So, curious 5-year-old me wandered the 100 feet to my home and started snooping around. I should mention that this voice was yelling something unintelligible from a distance, not screaming, more calmly yelling, kind of. I heard the voice a 4th time halfway there, and I stopped dead where I stood. The voice wasn't coming from my house. It was coming from towards the pond. But what was more was that the voice sounded like my mother's voice. I knew for a fact that my mother wasn't home, and my grandmother was inside the house. The most eerie part of it all was that the voice was yelling my name. The voice was just yelling Jack, 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 over and over again. They'd yell once, then they'd stop for about 5 seconds, then yell again. I knew my mom wasn't home at all, so who could the voice be? Curious, after another time of hearing my name being called, I called out, "Yeah?" in response. A few moments of silence followed this. A few seconds longer than before. Then finally, the voice called out my name again. Again I replied, and like clockwork, I heard my name being called out again, coming from the woods towards the pond. After this, I turned around and headed back. I don't know why, but I wasn't creeped out, and I wasn't scared, just confused. I told my grandmother, but she chalked it up to being my imagination. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe somebody was in the woods calling out to someone else, or maybe it was an animal making a sound that I misinterpreted to be my mother calling my name. Regardless, I know that I was convinced then. And even now, I am still convinced that it wasn't just my imagination. So, why do I say I think it was a skinwalker? Well, if you don't know what a skinwalker is, I suggest you look it up. But I'd only heard about people having experiences with skinwalkers and sharing them. Finally, about 2 years ago, I was listening to a video by Lazy Masquerade on YouTube and heard a story about a person's experience with an actual skinwalker. Well, again, the reason why I think that I almost encountered was a skinwalker is because the legend goes that skinwalkers can't form entire sentences or speak altogether, only names, and sometimes small phrases. We still live on a property where this happened. I've never experienced anything else like this ever since then.